America.
Welcome to the Costa Mesa Pettis Perspective. This is a special edition, so we're not going to number this segment. And the reason I'm making this video, for one, there wasn't a regular order council meeting last night, so I wanted to talk about the Zoom call that was put on by the Ad Hoc Committee, put together to address the housing element and how it relates to Measure Y. The Ad Hoc Committee is Andrea Marr, Jeff Harlan, Reynolds, and I think that was it, and Ms. Lee. And first of all, before we get started, I wanted to go ahead and express my condolences to the family of Kelly Earnby. It was very sad, sudden passing of her. She was a nice person, a quality person, and did a lot of work for the city. So I just wanted to extend my personal condolences to her family. So the Ad Hoc Committee was formed, and there was a Zoom call last night. I think there was 49 citizens on the call, and what I don't want to do in this is to argue or defend or support the merits of Measure Y. My purpose of this video is just to explain what was going on. I do want to talk about Measure Y in the context of transparency and openness and in the governance of our city here. So that it might sound like I'm being critical of it, but I'm not trying to offer an analysis of Measure Y. I think that there's good arguments. I mean, there's arguments on both sides of the issue for sure. So I do not want to get into those weeds. But what I am going to say to start with was it's interesting to me on Measure Y because the very people that are now against Measure Y, a lot of them are the very people that were in support of Measure Y back when it was voted in by, I believe, 68% of the citizens of Costa Mesa. Back during that time, it came about because there was another side that was moving to rejuvenate parts of the west side. And they wanted to do lots of things on the west side to make it, and from their perspective, look better, get rid of some of the slumlord type situation over there. And the side that's currently against Measure Y now actually championed Measure Y to stop that particular regime from doing what they were doing. And now here, fast forward to this cycle and this time, what a difference the cycle and a regime makes. The very people that were for Measure Y are now against Measure Y because what I perceive to be, they think it's a hindrance to what they're trying to do. So it's it reminds me of the various, at the national level, how different, depending on who's in power, everybody wants to get rid of the filibuster until they're out of power. They love the filibuster. So I think it's a very similar analogy, and I think we have to be consistent and we have to be transparent, especially at the local level. And so right now, the reason this Ad Hoc Committee was formed was this is the beginning discussions of what is the housing element. And I'm going to do my best to really keep this as general as we can. The big RENA number, the 11,000 short units housing units we are here in the city comes from RENA. The city is expected to submit a draft housing element, which they did, which explains to the Department of Housing and Community Development in California what our plan is going to be to address those numbers. And Ms. Lee did, on behalf of the city, submit the housing draft housing element to the Department of Housing and Community Development and received a response back. And the reason for this Ad Hoc Committee was there was what they are saying in the Ad Hoc Committee, basically the way it was framed in this call was here. Andrea Marr headed up. We have this response from the Housing and Community Development Division. And there's a lot of issues with our housing element, and basically Measure Y is the major impediment. That was really the theme put forth in the call. So if you knew nothing about all this, you knew that we had this housing element the city had to send to the state, and they respond back going, well, there's restrictions. Your Measure Y is restricting your ability to do what we're asking in this housing element. And so if you were listening to the call, because there were lots of callers coming, there were obviously people that were teed up to call in. There were some people that were just regular citizens on behalf of the city expressing their dismay at what they were talking about in terms of wanting to get rid of Measure Y. That's the main point here. Was the Ad Hoc Committee is making the case. They didn't say it explicitly, but it's very obvious that we need to either amend, get rid of, do something with Measure Y, because it is impeding our ability to provide affordable housing here in Costa Mesa. It's impeding the city's ability to develop in all ways. So there was this debatable on the affordable house. So most of the callers calling in were making the point, hey, we need to have more affordable housing. I agree, we need to get rid of Measure Y. And it's important, first and foremost, to remember that 68% of the population, the citizens, voted Measure Y in. Okay, that's where I stop right there. If it was voted in on a ballot measure, as it was, then if you want it to be removed, it needs to be voted out on a ballot measure the way it was voted in. That's where I sit. Full stop on that. That's where I land. Now, I know there's more to it than that, but there was talk of, well, could we do a resolution? Could the council do a resolution to amend it? And basically that would be synonymous to an executive order from a president. So if this council did a resolution to tweak Measure Y, the next council could also undo that. So the other way that it could be removed or amended would be if the state or if the state court comes in, or a judge says, hey, this isn't working, you got to get rid of it. That's a different story. That we have to follow the rule of law. But for any other way, I mean, it was voted in 68% of the population. It needs to be voted out if we want it out. That's where I sit, for or against Measure Y. This is a citizen voted on initiative, and it needs to be removed by the citizens as well. And you need to make a better case. If you think that, a lot of people that called in and said, well, I voted for it, then I didn't realize what I was voting for. Well, I think it's incumbent upon the people who are voting to understand the measure. And it's also incumbent on, if you want to have it removed, you need to put forth the best case and put it back on the ballot 2022 to have it removed. That's where I am with that. But I will take major issue with the theme that was put forth by Andrea Marr, basically very aggressively, that Measure Y is the reason. So what I want to do is quickly, I'm not going to read I'm going to read the major, the category which they're talking about here. And this is the response letter from the Department of Housing and Community Development and Division of Housing Policy Development. They said the following changes are necessary to bring the city housing element into compliance with Article 10.6 of the Government Code. So they go ahead and list all the changes. Measure Y is one of them, but I'm going to give you the major headings here. Major B, housing needs, resources, and constraints. There needs to be outreach, assessment of fair housing. These are all changes that the state is saying need to be made. Enforcement, integration and segregation, racial, ethnic areas of concentration of poverty, recap in areas of affluence. I'm not going to read what all those mean, but these are changes they're looking for. Disparities of access to opportunity, disproportionate housing needs, including displacement risk, local data and knowledge, and other relevant factors. Sites inventory, contributing factors, goals, actions, metrics, and milestones, extremely low income households, housing conditions. These are all major headings, and there's paragraphs under each one that describes what they're looking for. Sites inventory, basically under the major category of an inventory of land suitable and available for residential development, including vacant sites and sites having realistic and demonstrated potential for redevelopment during the planning period. Realistic capacity, sustainable non-vacant sites. That's page 4. It goes into small sites, large sites, environmental constraints, infrastructure, ADUs, electronic sites inventory, zoning for a variety of housing types. And then it eventually gets on page 7 to Measure Y. It does say the element describes various aspects of the local voter initiative, which generally subjects legislative actions, example, specific and overlay plans involving residential development, to voter approval. The measure may be considered a potential constraint and may discourage developers from pursuing housing development. Now, that is in there, but that is one of 20-ish, 25 major categories with subcategories under that the state is saying they take issue with related to the draft housing element submitted by Ms. Lee on behalf of of Costa Mesa. So the point I'm trying to make is this call basically providing the idea that Measure Y is the big bad boogeyman constraining our ability to meet the RENA numbers and yada, yada, yada is one small part of many issues the state has with the plan. So I want the citizens to be clear about that. Again, I'm not saying for or against Y. I'm saying please don't make the mistake of thinking Measure Y is the reason the state doesn't like our draft housing element. So my concern is the same I've had with this particular council on many issues. Is it's a monolithic voting body with the exception of Don Harper. They're wanting to come in here and intimidate the citizens into getting rid of measures they don't like, impeding them to do the things that they would like to do. So it is really important. It was nice to see that 49 people were on the call. I kind of smiled a little bit because when the call came on, you could tell they're not used to more than 6 or 7 people being on these things. 49 of people were. Maybe it was more like 50-ish by the end of the call. I didn't personally speak. I was there to listen. You could tell a lot of these calls were from people. And by the way, I'm not going to go into the big initiatives everybody behind to bring back local control of our planning, but SCAG is not in favor. SCAG is on the side of, hey, let's the local what's the name of it? The local voices. I forget. I talked about last video, but there are lots of people that are not in favor of doing things the way that Ms. Lee and this council are suggesting we do them. I wanted you guys to be aware and understand what is happening. We're at the beginning stage of discussing all these things, but you can tell from the outset how they're going to try and move this thing forward. So if they want to get rid of Measure Y, fine. If the citizens want it gone, that's okay. Let's vote on it in 2022. And if that, the only other way I see it being a valid way to get rid of that measure is if a judge tells us to do so. We're not getting in there and tweaking it with resolutions because we don't like the way things are shaking out. Importantly, though, be kind to yourself, be good to each other. Together we can get it done. Bye for now.